Next slide, please. So here's an example from Shane Plath, working in South Africa. And so, Raleigh, am I going through this, or is somebody else going to go through this?
Oh, okay. Well, if you want me to go through it, I can. Really depends on what you'd rather do.
It's up to
What would you
you.
feel like?
People
Well,
might be
if
really bored listening to me.
come on, if you're bored with Elaine, type in one. No, I think they'd love to hear you do it if you're cool
Okay.
with that. What does everybody think? I think people would probably want to hear you talk about it. Am
Okay.
I right? Am I right? I want to hear more of Elaine. I want to hear more of Elaine. Not bored. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so lots
Okay.
of
Okay. Good.
cheerleading for Elaine, so I think we have our answer.
Thank you. So Shane is one of our Soil Food Web advisors. He's in training. He's just finished up this work on his um, farm, where banana is the main crop, but he's got a number of other vegetable types of crops. And so he did this work in both the banana as well as in his vegetables. And so finishing this up, he's got the biological data. He's got, here's the plant production. So this is a good example of the kind of project we would want you to do to meet the requirement to be billed as a soil food web consultant, a soil life consultant. Um, so Shane started out suffering a lot of loss. And so you can see what the banana plants look like on the left-hand side, and it's got the little title in there, Struggling Plants, December of 2015. And as an organic grower, he was very frustrated. He wasn't making very good crops, not very good production, all kinds of diseases and pests, and just not getting what he wanted. So he was thinking about going back to the conventional system because, you got to make money. Well, that's the problem with the organic world. They don't explain exactly why it is that organic agriculture works. And it's all about the biology in the soil. If you really do organic agriculture correctly, if you really have the patience, if you let things get kind of bad, and then the biology starts coming in, hopefully on its own, it will eventually. How long is it going to take Mother Nature to get this biology back? It could take her 3 years or 10 years or 100 years. So a lot of organic growers they don't have that kind of time to wait for Mother Nature to get around to it. There's no source of good biology anywhere near their farm. So it doesn't matter how much organic matter you get on the soil surface. It doesn't matter that you're doing, everything you think is right. How do you know whether you've got the biology? Yeah, microscope. So he was thinking about going back to the chemical system, and he really didn't want to do that. He knew the dangers, and he understood the problems with those toxic chemicals. So his farm, the farm workers were in jeopardy, and he just hated to do this. So he started looking around, and he came across the work that I was doing and took the classes and started to follow this process of getting the proper biology back into the soil. And so really started working on it in 2016. So here you are in June of 2017, which of course is harvest time in in South Africa. And you can see his bananas. Look at the difference. So the next slide, I think, goes a little bit more into the story of this. So you can read his story up there. He was making compost because in the organic world, you're supposed to make compost as the means of fertilization, but they don't tell you how to make it properly. So it smelled really bad. It was anaerobic. When you have all kinds of fly larvae being laid in the compost, and you can see fly larvae in the putrefied organic matter, it's not really compost. that's actually conditions where you're making some very toxic materials. You're making a lot of acetic acid, way too acidic. You're producing alcohol, and that will kill the root systems of your plants if you put it out and there's still alcohol in the compost. Or remember that the organisms in an anaerobic situation, even though you may fluff it, even though you may mix that, got oxygen in there, the alcohol dissipated, but now you put that anaerobic material onto the surface of your soil, the anaerobic organisms in that material are going to immediately start making alcohol and other toxic materials. So it can be very detrimental. Putrefied organic matter is very detrimental to the plant. So he was seeing a lot of disease. He was seeing a lot of damage. He was putting on potassium sulfate, which to me is like, how can that be organic? Potassium sulfate is a salt. What's natural about that? Blood meal, lime, what's natural about that? Gypsum, those are both salts. Manure, well, what's the quality of your manure? You really need to compost any manure so you get rid of the human pathogens and you get rid of the salt concentration that quite often comes in commercially produced cow manures or horse manures. Cedar wood chips, yep, but with a cedar, you've got to make certain that the cedar volatile organic carbons evolve off because those are antimicrobial agents. So you've got to make sure the smell from any wood chip is gone before you actually use it. So he's using all these materials, not being successful. So he found my work, and started to learn. Next slide. Started to learn how to change his production. There's December 2015. Does that look like a banana plantation? That's pretty horrific, isn't it? And here we are then in June of 2017, hugely increased yields, got rid of the diseases and the pests. Well, he's not come as far as he can come. This will continue to increase over the next several years. When we were working in Australia, we had several banana growers that we were working with, but the one that comes to mind for me is Graham in Coffs Harbour. Can't remember his last name right off the top of my head. But when I went out to visit him first, and I looked out at his production field, I didn't even recognize that those were bananas because they were even shorter than what Shane is showing you here in December of 2015. To me, the little banana plants look like something from outer space. Had no idea what those plants were because they were so deformed. They were so unhappy. They were so unhealthy. So got them to start making really good compost. Yes, they were organic, but they weren't making the compost right. Got that information through to them. Take all of the grass away from the base of the tree, remove all of the weeds, and put in a good inch and a half, if you can manage it, 2 inches of really good, extremely fungal compost as you possibly can get it. And within one growing cycle, all of the diseases, the pests, the beetles eating their way through the base of the trees, gone. And they started producing bananas again. So I have pictures of the base of the hill, looking up at the top of the hill through the banana plantation, where you could very clearly see the farmhouse up at the top of the hill. And 6 months later, taking a picture from exactly the same place, looking up towards the top of the hill, and you would never know that there was a house up there. Because the bananas came back. They had beautiful bunches of bananas. You just got to get the proper biology back into that soil. Stop killing it. And even in the organic world, we will kill things. So got to get that part of organic pulled back around so people understand what's important. Next slide, please. Monitoring critically important. What's on the grass? So you look at them harvesting the grass, and they needed a lot of tonnage, so they actually took one of their fields in order to grow the green plant material to put into the compost yards. Their initial inoculum, they started in the small piles that you see on the lower picture on the left. They started making the inoculum of these organisms to go into their larger windrows that they could be using in some of their production as well. Excuse me. And then here's their turner. And you can see the windrows, nice tall piles. You just have to be sticking your hands into it. You got to be measuring temperature. You want to be measuring oxygen. You want to make certain as you're turning that there are no horrific smells happening. Yep, steam on the bottom, no worries about steam. It just means the temperature in your pile is much higher than the outside temperature, and there's a little bit of moisture in the air. So Shane started learning how to make better and better compost, started improving his fungal inoculum, didn't have anaerobic conditions anymore, so they were applying at a rate of 1 to 10 tons per hectare. So you're looking at half a ton per acre, depending on what was missing in the soil. Because as you've got that microscope, you know what's missing in your soil, and so you know how much of your compost to be putting on. Next slide, if you would, please. So I like his turner. That's a nice over-the-row version. So Shane had 25 workers that he trained. He had, brewers, large-size brewers, so he could be making enough to apply on all of his acreage. Because he wanted to get that biology turned around and get to the end of the process as rapidly as possible, he put out a fair amount of compost tea. So 150,000 liters of compost tea every 2 days per hectare, I assume, to very rapidly get the leaf coverage. Well, how do you know if you've got the leaf coverage you need? Microscope, take a look at it. Shane is saying cleaning the brewers was the most challenging part. Well, it's me and my high pressure washer. I would probably just, put additional hoses, bibs on that thing so that when the compost tea is out, you could high pressure wash all of these tanks at the same time and get rid of any biofilms, any material that's not completely washed out of the bottom of the tank. So you could very rapidly. So there are ways to do that much more automatically. So you can see his sprayer in the bottom left. And you want to make certain that you've got the mist coming up from the bottom and covering the bottom of the leaves. The leaf material on the bottom is where most of the diseases and the pests are going to establish. You don't see them. Other predators don't see them. And so you've got to make sure that you're covering the bottom of the leaf even more than the top. And then you can see on the bottom right how much improvement in banana production has occurred because the biology has been applied. Next slide. Shane also noticed a huge increase in the thickness and density of the root hairs. Lots more small, fine feeder roots starting to happen. At the very bottom, you can see that fungal hyphae. You can see those white strands. That's what you want to see. You want to see that really good, thick, rhizomorph material occurring, and that's going to let you know that your root systems are finally happy once again. Building structure is another really important thing, that you've got to have both the bacteria and the fungi present to build structure, so oxygen and water and the root systems of bananas will go deep. Working with the guys at Coffs Harbour in Australia, they first believed that the root systems of bananas were just up here on the surface, that they didn't go down into the soil at all. No, that's because they had a really terrible compaction layer in that soil. It was just awful. And so, of course, the root systems couldn't go down. They were restricted to this little tiny layer of soil at the surface of their system. Whereas when we came in and we covered that all with really good compost around those trees, those root systems immediately just, boom, went for deep. They don't want to blow over in a hurricane. They don't want to be ripped out and taken away. So, wind is, kind of a driving force. And we don't want that to be happening. So you got to get those root systems going down into the soil. I think the last time I talked with Graham and his farm director, they were noting that the root systems on the bananas were down at 10 feet. So healthy soil when your roots can start going down that deep. Next slide, if you would, please. So some pictures then of their production. So you can see the plants in their greenhouse. Let's get the potting mix that you're making. Have the really good biology in it so your plants come to the field with the proper biology around them. You apply that proper biology into the planting hole. You make certain that the mycorrhizal fungi are in your potting mix, so when their plants come out to the field, they already have the mycorrhizal fungi on them. And so all of these steps that you want to think about, ever improving that fungal to bacterial biomass ratios. So banana, it's a glorified grass. So most of the time we're looking at banana as having a fungal to bacterial biomass ratio, somewhere around maybe 2 to 5. That's what we want to achieve. Shane was getting the bacterial ratios going from 0, no fungi at all, in his original dirt that he started working with. And so in this first year, he got that fungal to bacterial ratio to a 0.35. Huge improvement, but not yet there where we need it to be. Of course, you got to have the protozoa. You better have some good guy nematodes, not the bad guys. So moving things along in the right direction. Compost, extracts, teas, microscope, because you got to know the good guys are there and that you're actually improving them in your soils. Next slide. So I love all the pictures in here of Shane's improved production, and it applies not just to his bananas, but to the spinach and the green beans and the ginger. So it's great to have Shane show you the pictures of his ginger as it improved through that growing season. And then think about the fact that this is not just the end. He's not got everything to where it should be. He still has more improvement. Well, as he improves this biology in the soil, he's going to get greater yields, less problems with it. So he's only going to improve. His yields and the amount of money that he's making is just going to get better and better and better. Next slide. Ta-da, pretty pictures of bananas. So I don't know. Raleigh, did he tell you what those two different banana boxes were? Was this like his?
Well, I think the first one is just example of the healthy bananas coming into the supermarket, and the bananas at that checkout counter. They're unblemished, they're looking great, and these are high-priced organic bananas. It's like when you go in a supermarket and you see the quality of bananas, it's great. He was just saying he was getting a great price. Because organic bananas are in huge demand. They're not grown a lot, and especially South Africa, because they're so hard to grow. That's why he'd been trying this process for years, because the demand was so high for organic bananas there in South Africa.
Yep.
But that was just showing like these are such high quality bananas compared to other ones you would find in the supermarket.
So, which agricultural field do you want? No brainer. So, isn't that the last slide for me?
That's it, Elaine. I mean, this is a good opportunity. If you want to take a well-earned bathroom break, please go for it. I didn't even go for 2 hours,
I
but
get to eat lunch.
you'll go eat lunch. But this is great. Like, so Brian's coming out really soon. He's coming from a regenerative agriculture homestead background and to share his story. But first, I want to tell you more about what Shane said. Like, I talked with Shane a lot about it, and it's hard to reach out to him. He's in the middle of the season. But what he said, he was so interested to share. He really wanted to share it because this saved his farm. You know, this is 1,500 hectares. This is a huge area. And it could have collapsed in a year, but by using this practice, he was able to turn this around in a year. While being a full-time farmer, while taking these online classes, he was able to use this information and get massive results on his farm. It was mind-blowing, and just seeing just how fast things can turn around. And this can apply anywhere this can apply. And he said, I like to give God all the glory for what's been achieved on the family farm, which could have not been possible with the help of Dr. Elaine Ingham and the Environmental Celebration team. So that's some great words to end on by Shane. And now I want to turn it over to an amazing homestead farmer, Brian.